Thanks everyone so much for coming to our Open Industry Forum. We're very, very excited about our session today, and we hope all of you will not be shy. I know you won't. And Ray and I will be walking around with the mics for any questions that you might have. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. First, to my left is Nigel Emery, and he is the head of our Marketing and Communications Committee. Nigel is with Samusa. Jodi Senese from CBS Outdoor. Jodi heads up our Education and Training Committee. Got it that time. Renee Jordan to Jodi's left. Renee is with Clear Channel Outdoor, and Renee heads up our Data and Policy Standards Committee. And to Renee's left is the irrepressible Tommy Teeple from Lamar Advertising, and Tommy heads up our Conference Committee.
Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for our great
Let's
panelists.
clap for each other.
Thank you. And kind of the way this will work, everybody, is we'll ask each of the committee chairs to kind of make a quick statement as far as what their committees, kind of the hot topics their committees are working on, and then we'll kind of work that into some questions, and then we'll, as Andrea had mentioned, we'll be here to give any of your questions up to the panelists as well. But before we get started, I'd just like to make one really quick observation and comment, which will hopefully kind of set things off as we go. And I'm sure everybody was here today and saw Ben Swinburne's presentation on the financial status of the industry, and I think I absolutely 100% agree with him. We have a very positive outlook for the industry. But then I have to temper that with something I heard Jeff Hazlett say right after that regarding change, adapt, or die. I think that's a very, very important thing to remember, because I think we're at that point in the out-of-home industry right now. And if we don't think things can change real quickly, then we should go ask the Washington Post and the New York Times how quickly things can change. And we have to remember that there is a consumer that's out there in front of our signs, and that consumer is changing. Their behavior has changed more in the last 5 years than it's changed in the previous 50 before that. It's being driven by convergence, it's being driven by screen culture. We have to find a way to tap into that, and that's our real future. And while we can really kind of interact with those consumers and help them move along within their daily lives and bring them utility, bring them experience, all of those good, fun things that's out there. But I wanted to kind of lead that off with that little bit quick statement, and then I'll start with a very, very quick question. And Renee, maybe you might want to answer this because it's the data committee, or it's actually open to anybody.
Thank goodness.
One of the hot topics we heard this morning, programmatic.
You're starting with the hardest question?
Man,
Well, let's get it out of the way
Throw
first. I think
something
it's
easy.
important to get that out of the way first. Programmatic. We've all heard it. We've all seen it. We've all experienced it in one way, shape, or form, either from our clients or through the industry and all of that. Where are we with it? There doesn't seem to be any middle ground, as Jodi and I were talking about just a few minutes before. There's one position, there's another position, but there's no middle ground. How do we get to that middle ground, and how do we find something that really works?
Yeah, how do we get all the way to programmatic when we just started in this industry with ratings coming out in the last few years? So the charge of the Data Policy and Standards Committee is to kind of address these issues and facilitate the use of TAB or ratings data for out of home in the buying and selling. And the first thing you got to do is, I think Sean said it this morning, automate the workflow.
Right.
Before you can get to a place where there's programmatic is such a polarizing term that means mostly negative to the pieces that people who use it, or depending on those who are standing to benefit from it. But we really need to get our data out there. We invested a lot in ratings over the last few years and to level set out of home with other media, and we're just not there yet. So these systems can help enable the actual moving of our data into these systems. And this committee has worked on the standardization process and to protect the interest and the assets of our industry as well as the business interest of our membership.
And I apologize. I think I jumped ahead a little bit right to the question.
But I answered it right.
Beautifully. And absolutely beautifully. So
Good answer.
So she's got
Good
one.
answer.
Clearly, there's one of the hot topics that our Data Standards Committee is working on. So, Nigel, from Marketing and Communications, why don't you give real quickly some of the hot topics that committee is working on right now?
His mic's not on.
No. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're on, but I don't think that they can hear you.
Great, the mic doesn't work.
Technical difficulties.
So we have a great committee which covers all elements of our industry, constituents from all three different parts: advertisers, agencies, specialists, and media owners. We've had one very feisty meeting so far this year. And our job, as you'd expect, is to just work out what we want to say, how we want to say it, and to whom we want to say it. And that's what we're working on. Some of the hot topics are really revolving around the initiatives being taken by the TAB over the next year. I think 3 of which there are workshops on, including digital, transit, and ROI, which is on Tuesday afternoon. And of course, further on down the line, we're looking at the element of data fusion, which is very exciting. And so really what we're trying to do is to work out how we say it and to whom we say it. And I just want to say one thing. This is going to be a to and fro between everybody. We want it to continue to be that. So the TAB will be sending out an email address to everybody who's here later on. So any ideas you've got about how we market, what we should do, who we should say it to, and what we should say, please send it to the TAB. So we can have this as an ongoing industry initiative, not just a group of 10 of us sitting in the TAB office once every 3 weeks. Thank you.
Jodi, education and training.
Okay, is my mic working?
Yes.
My mic is working. I co-chair with Norm Chait, and really the main initiative that we're working on now is making sure that everybody from the buyer and seller perspective gets trained up on the metrics. You know, the metrics are only going to be as good as those of us who are presenting them and using them in the marketplace. So there's really 2 fronts that we're working on most aggressively at this point. One is the online module training, which has been uploaded to both the TAB and the OAAA websites. I think that we should urge ourselves and our people to all get involved in these, you know, spare time, home time, weekends, nighttime, as well as in the offices, you know, as groups, as teams. Unless we all become absolutely fluent in this language, in our new metrics, they're really not going to realize the outcome that we're all looking for. The other piece of it, and this was also key, were workshops. We also felt that the classroom setting, the classroom environment with real trainers explaining the metrics, how to use them, real case studies would be key as well. These are really great points of convergence for different people in the industry to sit together and have some real dialogue. One of the exciting things that we've added to these workshops is having a consultative component to it. So it's not just about learning the nuts and bolts of the metrics. It's learning how to use them out there in the marketplace. What the clients might say, what buyers say, what vendors should say, how the conversation flow needs to transpire, and that's been really successful. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, we conducted both a buyer's workshop in New York on March 11th and a seller's workshop down in Atlanta, and both were quite successful, and you'll be hearing more about them in the months to come.
Now you're off.
I heard great things about the workshop. Did anyone here attend either the buyer or the seller's workshop?
Few people.
Do you have anything you would like to say about it? Did you enjoy the experience? How was it?
It's okay.
Thank you. I think I'll stay up here.
Yeah, say it again.
My group attended the agency workshop in New York, and the biggest benefit was probably to the buyers who had 1 or 2 years experience. They seemed to benefit the most. They had a lot of questions, and literally the week after the workshop, they really started using it in client presentations.
Thanks.
Tommy, I know the conference is on and going, but
Yeah.
maybe a couple of the
Well-
issues and challenges you faced in planning the conference.
Sure. And first of all, Jill Nickerson and I are co-chairs on this, and I think she got lost in the elevator. But you're in the middle of what we've been planning to do, and our goal is that by tomorrow afternoon we'll be through, and you'll be home on your way safely home after the Obie Awards. You know, basically everything that we worked on up to this point was really just trying to come up with some kind of content that would satisfy a lot of the questions that y'all have as operators, as you know, people that are trying to grow this business, or those of you that are on the buying side and trying to figure out how to make it a little smoother and a little bit easier for us to take care of customers. So that's kind of what we've been all about, and there are a lot of people that participate on that committee, and honestly, they're the ones that really do the heavy lifting. All we get to do is sit up here in the chairs and hopefully ask softball questions, Ray, hopefully softball questions.
And look good.
And yeah.
And look good, yes, absolutely. Well, Nigel, question for you. What are some of the more important topics that we need to be better at marketing ourselves at within the industry and externally to our clients and to the other media formats that we haven't done very well in the past?
So many things, and we can start with basic things like out-of-home ratings, which still has not been picked up appropriately throughout the industry. Personally, I believe that is because we haven't told our clients enough about it. We have a habit in the business, as we've said so many times, of talking to ourselves. We don't talk to the people who are actually spending the money, who want the accountability, who want to see how the money is being spent. I think one of the things we're going to talk about later is how can out-of-home become more sexy. That's something else we should start telling people about. In terms of the way it can interact with social media and mobile media to make it not only more effective, but more interesting and appealing. So we can make it creative and sexy on the one hand, but we have accountability and metrics on the other hand. Those two together work, I'm sure, to make a more impressive package. And we should be telling it to advertisers because we all know it.
You made a great point. So is one of the things we should be doing better, is it more of reaching out and connecting with some of our sister agencies, other groups out, such as the MMA? We have Greg Stewart here speaking, who's the CEO of the MMA, the Mobile Marketing Association. Is it becoming more connected to those types of groups to get our message out cross-platform, or is there something other type of thing we can use to be better at just pure marketing ourselves?
I think you use what's available to you, what ammunition is there. And if you use expert groups that are not directly traditional out-of-home, and we can work together and everyone can benefit, then I think that's the right thing to do.
I've been told I need to sit.
Want to read? You got the mic?
Ray's going to get mic'd up also so that we can make sure we have microphones in the audience for everyone. One of the things I wanted to talk about, Tommy, was the conference.
Yeah, okay.
One of the things that I always hear after so many years coming to the conference is, I wish they would do this, I wish they would do that, I don't like this, I don't like that. So I'm hoping that today we can get from the audience some input on some topics that you guys would like to see at our next conference.
That's a great idea. What do y'all want to see in a conference? I mean, if we were starting from scratch, what are some of the things you would like to hear? And maybe some of the people. Some of the people we can't afford, but hey, Joe, are you the microphone wrangler out there? Y'all realize, the thing I hate about this is Nigel has that great English accent. I'd sound so much smarter if I had an English accent.
You sound so smart. Come on.
Yeah, but nobody would know what I was saying, and it would be really, that's okay, I'll get over it. Hey, we have a question up here.
I was just wondering if we would be able to bring up some of the account directors from the multimedia agencies who do not choose to put out-of-home on the plan, and let them tell us, and we did it a few years ago, and I think it was a very well-attended session, why they're not using out-of-home now that we do have the ratings.
So this is going to be a little bit like drowning puppies. Well, seriously, I mean, if you're not buying outdoors, sometimes it's a great suggestion. What we do, we have to make sure we're in a great place where they want to get to that location so bad they're willing to sit up here and get fried, because that's going to be you guys will be a tough audience. But that's
It's done.
Joe?
It's on the agenda.
That's a good question. I mean, is that possible? Joe said it's possible, so thank you.
I think that'd be great. Anyone else have any suggestions for the conference? Rocky?
Where's the rock? Where are you?
Yeah, he's there.
All right, well,
In orange.
back here.
yes.
I have a suggestion. Philippe Bizot from Media Keys France. Would it be possible to have a few ideas on out-of-home international? Because I have the impression an out-of-home in the US is out-of-home, your home. But what about out of the country?
That really is a good suggestion. And I don't know how many of y'all got a chance to see Francois' presentation in the other room, and it was right at lunchtime, and it's a shame because presentation is remarkable, and really, I would say 90% of it, Joe, wouldn't it be about 90% of it are things that have been done in Europe. And there are a couple of things I'd never seen before, and it really is exciting. And I think that's a great suggestion because, I think out-of-home ratings really came about as a result of things that were done in Europe, and that's what kind of got us on the path. And so I'm sure there are a lot of creative things, especially after seeing what Francois showed today. There are some creative things that aren't duplicated here in the U.S., and we could do it. I just don't think we've ever thought of it before.
I also think that's a great suggestion. You think about the Clear Channel's presence globally.
Yeah.
There's a lot of experimentation that we're able to do because of the smaller plants and the more pedestrian use cases. So I think.
So it makes sense probably to have an international kind of wrap-up or 360 kind of spanning the globe. So instead of being so myopically focused on what's going on in the U.S., to have a wider spectrum of what's going on elsewhere.
And do it in Vienna. Oh, no.
Baton Rouge, huh?
Yeah. Well, I'll be in New Orleans next
The
week.
hub of
That'll
international
Montreal.
advertising.
They don't give me any.
I'll repeat the question if you ask it to me.
We're obviously a visual
We're-
medium.
Hello?
You can't
There
get
we
the
go.
audio
There we go.
right.
I think I'm on now.
Yeah.
Data standards
Yes.
in general. We've been talking about data standards. We've been trying to get towards some kind of data standards. I know automation kind of will lead us to that point, but is there anything else we could be doing, agency and operator, to get to true data standards? And is there such a thing really as true data standards in the
What is
industry?
a good, I don't think everybody in here knows what a data standard is.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the point.
And I think
need to
you
define
got them
it,
in the
right?
wrong order. You cannot have automation unless you have standards. So you've got it in the reverse order. And to me, the first step in data standardization is level setting the inventory through TAB audit and ratings of our inventory. That puts us all, whether it's Lamar, Clear Channel or CBS, on the same playing field in terms of audience reach, the same rules and standards. So that's the first standard. We've talked as an industry about standardization of formats, size, shape, time, digital, static. We talked about this in some of our committee meetings yesterday.
Yeah.
And we kind of agreed that what we can standardize we have, and we've done that effectively. But what makes out-of-home so powerful, unique, and kind of really impactful in terms of advertisers' marketing is the unique formats and some of the other government requirements that allow us. That we would never change our formats or change the size to be standard. Stephen Freitas and the AAA is pushing a lot of this, but we should do what we can where it makes a lot of sense, but not to take too much uniqueness out of the industry and the capabilities of non-standards. But I think the question that you're trying to get at is around data and RFPs that
programmatic.
all buyers and sellers alike speak the same language in terms of impressions or requests for proposals and respond back, so it's a simplified process. And
Facilitation of the buy-sell process,
Yes.
in other words. I think that's a key to everyone, because I think if we can, as an industry, begin to
Right.
kind of take those efficiencies, it'll work on both sides of the table.
Ray, can I make a comment on that as well? Can I cross into your committee?
you're welcome anytime.
One of the things that we hear most frequently when we do queries out there and focus groups is that out-of-home is difficult to buy. And if we don't create some standards, we're just going to keep that objection out there alive in the marketplace. And as we add more things, more metrics, more formats, more aspect ratios, if we just each go off willy-nilly doing what we think we feel like doing at that moment, it's just going to get even more difficult, and that objection is going to become more fulfilled. And I think that's a risk for all of us that we need to take seriously. So standards really is an important platform for us all to get behind. I think it will help facilitate just the buying process across all our platforms.
And I think we'll have standards when everyone has to go to the same place to get the information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want everybody to speak the same language, send them all to the same country. And we started, in fact, it was 3 years ago when we took the database and we were all talking about, why can't we make that database that we have easier for people to use. Why can't that be a central system? You know, people talk about programmatic buying, and none of us want to get into, you know, become you know, something like Travelocity or Kayak. I mean, nobody wants to go there. We don't want to create auctions for inventory by any means. But if we had a place where people could go, and I know Sean kind of addressed this, and Kevin was pitching this 2.5 years ago, a place where people could go, like the TAB database, where they could say, these are the markets I'm interested in, these are the demographics I'm trying to reach, this is the weight that I want. If I don't know what the weight is, here's, you know, here's roughly how many panels I want. We won't do dollars because we're not putting rates. Where people could go in, harvest all the units that reach that particular demographic profile, and then when you pull those units up, click to the individual websites and start the process. I mean, if you want to get everybody competing with each other, fine. If you want to try to get dollars, you know, by panel, fine. But at least that's a central place to go. And if everybody has to go there, everybody's going to have to speak the same language, or they won't know how to access that data. And she's got a question. Come on, hold on a second.
There it is.
Thanks, Owens.
Okay, Tommy, you know I love you, but I just want to know if all the other media is going to be available on a platform where we're able to go in and do bidding, and it won't just be digital, it'll be a feed of digital on static boards with digital feeds. If we could go in and we could set a CPM and an audience, not just a demographic, but an audience, it could only be better because it would simplify the process.
Right.
Okay, I misheard you then. I thought you said you didn't want that.
I think
He
No,
doesn't.
when you said CPM, I don't think we
He
could do
just said
CPM
right.
because we're not going to put, we don't want to put prices on this inventory. Not to say that, you know, 3 years from now, who knows, we may have to. I mean, the market may demand that we do that. I mean,
I think we
goodness
need
knows
to-
that's what happened to the travel industry
Well, I think
at
we
some
need to
point.
start somewhere. And Renee, I understand some members of your committee are working to test several systems that will help us move toward a more automated buy-sell process.
I mean, some of the system work that, you know, I think we all, the operators ourselves, are looking at ways to improve the buy-sell. You know, what are we doing to improve our ability to sell out of home? What are we doing to improve the buying process? A part of the committee work, it probably was announced, maybe it was here last year. I was not, so I don't know the history. But there were a number of companies that have been under developmental license agreement with TAB for ingesting of our data to create not a platform for buying, even though their ambition probably is going that direction and started with that direction, but really understanding that it's facilitating our way to package our information into a place. And in some ways, I welcome it from creativity that, you know, bringing other, you know, media marketers into this industry to look at it and say, what if we did this, this, and this, now that I can see the landscape of the out-of-home industry. Before, I didn't know how to buy, where to go. You know, what happens if, you know, the client who we pitched newly to the power of out-of-home in terms of proximity or in terms of its reach for branding and drive to retail, what if they say yes? And then we create this, you know, emails. I had to laugh at Heather this morning when she said, stop sending me emails with attachments that are really huge. It's like, oh, we're still sending emails. It's crazy.
we're now moved into the programmatic area
Yes.
of the discussion.
It always
I
goes
guess
there,
we're
doesn't
kind
it?
of, we're going to end
Always
up here
goes to
anyway,
the
won't
P
we?
word.
Yeah.
In fact, Renee, you coined it yesterday. She said she doesn't like it. It's now the P word. We've got to find a different name for it.
That's right.
And I've been scurrying around trying to understand it recently. And there's no doubt if you speak to different people, you get different answers to what the hell programmatic actually is and where it starts and where it ends and where it's going to be in the future. To Jodi's point, I think if it makes it easier to plan and buy, then it's going to happen. And I think we heard this morning from a few people, adapt it or have it thrust upon you because it's going to be there eventually. It's just it's a question of what we do with it and how we allow it to evolve. Yeah, the digital space, it has been very much associated with the R word, the remnant space, and what about your prime ship? Because nobody's going to have that programmatically because I want my guy out there selling it. Well, I'm not sure that's always going to be the case. I mean, at some point, it's going to move from the basic simplification to a kind of almost financial necessity as we look towards selling lots more inventory.
Correct.
And the only way to know the true value of our media, I'm throwing this out, this is rather controversial, but why the hell not? I mean, why don't we move to an open inventory where everybody's avails are available online, and preemption rules, and you secure your units 2 weeks before it's due to post, or be transmitted, less so in digital, of course. And that's the only way supply and demand really are going to work to produce what the true value is, to let the market work. Now, everybody's, including myself, is scared stiff at that because you don't want the agencies looking at your avails, do you really, by God? But why not?
Why
Andrea,
not?
what do you
Why
think?
not have avails on there?
Yeah.
You know, I think there's some people that would probably say that if you just put avails, again, you start moving into bidding wars.
And why not?
I think there's a
'Cause I wanna make
continuum.
money.
It makes more money for us.
You know, there's a continuum, so we have to start at A and kind of go down a road. And I think the first part is some automation that we don't have yet. I mean, true programmatic is real-time buying impressions, and online that works. There's infinite inventory, and we have, you know,
Finite.
We have finite inventory, and we have location specific, and that's not the same case online. So it's never going to be completely parallel, but learning what we're learning about the online space should give us pause for advancing some of the conversation and some of the buying mechanisms beyond what we're doing today. So
Right.
there is a road that we need to go down. Getting to complete programmatic,
Exactly.
you know, will be our children's
I think
issue, not
stage
ours.
one may be to start trading on impressions. I mean, because you can't, doesn't matter how you
but
trade the
there's-
impressions, if people are buying dots on a map and not
But-
audience, then
Location
we're
But
More
like
about
with-
audience, yeah.
But the,
Yeah, but I think like with anything, the out-of-home aspect of that will be different than other media because it's a different medium.
Nigel, you were not supposed to ask the tough questions.
sorry?
But you were not supposed to ask
They're
the
asking
tough
questions.
questions.
I- I-
They were
I-
supposed to
I-
come from the
I-
audience,
What-
but
but the interesting thing, though, for one quick thing to add is what we're forgetting too is we're talking about, I believe, in one-dimensional data. We have to think that when we start to get to these further down the line, there's multi-dimensions of data that we're going to be putting into systems that will make us and make them, I believe, the medium much more valuable than we're thinking it's going to be.
you know, the most depressing thing I've seen so far, you know, at the conference, and it's been a very uplifting process or experience for me so far, but I think it was Ben's chart this morning that had, it was touted as positive, but that straight line for out-of-home share of market, it's just like flat line for the last 20, 30 years. I don't know what his time horizon was, but it was a flat line, whereas online was skyrocketing above it, and I'm like, that should be us. And I don't think it should be us in terms of, you know, price deflation, thank you, but we should be on that rising curve instead of the other way around.
100%, and it's going to be data that's going to lead us
And-
there.
Right,
100%.
and it not, we talk about programmatic and like put our heads in the sand about, you know, moving data or moving our data, keeping the data to ourselves. We're not going to say 4%. We're going to go down. We need to turn the tide around and go to the, to
100%
not,
agree.
and it's not about going programmatic. It's about embracing big data, embracing the product innovation that we've seen over the last couple of days, and really, you know, not to like keep all of our cards to ourselves or to our chest, but really put it out there. And that's why I was pushing so much on the data standards committee and the work is that the more people know about the ratings and the more people can integrate it into their ROI and their media and marketing mix models, the more out of home's like, aha, it really works and we know it works.
There was a question?
Yeah.
Well, a question and sort of a comment. So Kevin Foreman from a technology company called Inrix. First of all, thanks for having me here. I'm not in the out-of-home industry, but getting pulled into it and listening to this great conversation. Let me suggest that as I listen to the conversation, everyone thinks the pie is the same size and you're dividing it up. The trick is to get the pie to grow by bringing in more advertisers. And I'll go through a quick experience with Facebook. Show of hands, how many people have actually done a Facebook ad campaign here? It's an amazing experience. And Facebook, you know, so here we are, a technology company in Seattle. We have lots of job openings. We can't hire mobile developers. We have 6 job openings. In Seattle, there are 392 other job openings for mobile developers, all of which pay much more than we do. So I became an advertiser. At 2 in the morning in my pajamas, I went in and said, show me everybody in Seattle, 3 million, who have a degree in this or this or this, and it narrows it down between this demographic and this demographic who work at one of these 5 companies. And we created an ad campaign for 257 people. And we ran it, it cost us like $23, we got 4 campaigns and hired 2 people. And I'm now an advertiser and Facebook became that. So here's my thoughts. One is, you can grow the pie by bringing more advertisers. I've actually spoken to 2 advertisers this last month, big multi-million-dollar advertisers, who refuse to spend any money out of home. And when I asked them why, they said, because we can't do post-buy analysis, and we don't spend any money, we can't do post-buy analysis. I'd like to bring those guys into the industry. But the Facebook model is a good example, I think, for this industry, where you can get those beginners, newbies with training wheels, whatever you want to call. But I bet if I kept advertising more and more, a Facebook salesperson would call me and I'd get into their inner circle where I could do more exciting things than be limited to a 35-word campaign with an image that looks like this, which is what I was limited to. Because right now, I think the out-of-home industry is the only industry that, as an advertiser, I can't buy a campaign at 2 o'clock in the morning in my pajamas. I think every other media I can, unless someone corrects me. I have to call somebody to give me avails and pricing. And this is the only industry that forces me to do that, so I'll just go to the next industry and buy my advertising from them.
I'm going to give Kevin your phone number.
Yeah.
You want to reply to that?
You know what? Oh, yeah, well, go ahead.
No, you go first.
Okay. What you're saying is absolutely true, and one of the beautiful things about Facebook are the metrics that you get, that you can daily go in and look at those metrics. You've got a dashboard. You can look at that dashboard, and you can see what you're basically getting back in reach and frequency, et cetera. So, and we've got to get to that point. That's the end. You know, it's like Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. One of the things that TAB as an organization did this year that I think was monumental, and really actually it was in 2013, and that was to open up that data that we have to outside software authors, you know, for people to write software for it. Now, we had to put a fence around it because it's our data, and we don't want somebody to take it and go out and market it to people that aren't TAB members and make money from it. So there are all kind of stipulations. You know, we have to decide if we want something done. They have to sign a paper that said they will only use it for us, for example, if they're doing programming for us. But the beautiful thing about it, and so far we have 3 people that have qualified, you know, we begin to realize, for lack of a better description, we were starting to outrun our coverage. You know, there were things that we need to do from a software level that in some cases, internally, we didn't have that kind of horsepower. And by opening that data up to people that, of course, I mean, like I said, they have to go through go through quite a bit of testing before they're allowed to come into that data. I believe that we're going to get some new and fresh eyes on that data, and they're going to be able to write software to be able to ultimately do the kind of things that you're talking about. I think if we sit around and wait internally for all of us to, you know, to bake it in our own little shops, I think it's going to take a lot longer.
Yeah, to echo the words of our CEO and Chairman, Joe Philport, we weren't ready yet.
No.
Now
Correct.
I think
Now
we're
we're
ready
ready
for that.
I think
And moving.
Yeah, I have a comment because I think between programmatic and where the industry is coming from is a huge gap that I think the people on this stage are trying to help us fill. And I think part of it is empowering clients with knowledge, empowering agencies and empowering advertisers to make decisions about out-of-home so they buy the medium. So what the Data Standards Committee has been working with is a process of getting you comfortable with mainstreaming your information, not avails, not rates, but ratings. So if I'm buying TV or if I'm buying radio, as an agency, I'm empowered. I have Arbitron and Nielsen ratings to make decisions that lead me to the best buys for my medium. The Data Standards Committee is helping us mainstream data into the buyers and planners and advertisers of that media. ROI falls into that natural food chain. I guess my question to the panel is, where does education come in? One, to make everyone in this room comfortable with a totally different way of looking at information. Your willingness to take risks and lose a little bit of control and let clients have information they need, and to use standards to make the process. And I think here's the problem with a platform that's isolated, is people aren't buying out-of-home by itself. They're buying out-of-home with other media. So they really need multiple platforms that the buyers will choose in which our information flows, enriched by social media data, enriched by buying, sales data and everything else. So my question to the panel is, where do you see education helping to change the culture within our industry where all of you become comfortable to allow that to happen?
I think good question, Joe. I think the first part of that is that from the time we first launched the roadside metrics till now, we learned a lot about what we didn't know. And that kind of shaped the current education platform that we have going on now. So instead of just going out there and teaching the buyers and sellers about the metrics, we're teaching them about how to bridge the gap between the metrics and the selling conversation, the consultative part. And I think this is a basic laydown that we're doing at this point for all the buyers and sellers out there to get them fluent in the conversation of general metrics and the general media ecosystem. And one of the really good things about this industry is that there's a lot of long-term people who are very passionate about this industry. And that's also one of the bad things. One of the negative sides of this industry is that we don't have a lot of integrated knowledge. You know, I always said that out-of-home was like a roach motel. You can enter, but you can't leave. and that's really a very complimentary perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And that's that we
just called us a bunch of cockroaches.
we get in here and we fall in love and we become passionate about the industry. But the negative of that is that we have a very myopic point of view. We don't necessarily know what goes on in other parts of the media ecosystem. And to Joe's point, it happens with metrics, and we're trying to circumvent that now with a new way of educating all of us by talking more holistically about the media ecosystem and being more consultative. But I think programmatic and all these other data sharing and all these other silos become integrated into the Education Committee's platform as we go down the road. And I think that's definitely phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. This is not a one and done. We will be, educating our industry for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
You know what, I think it's really interesting, and if y'all haven't done this before, we did this in our corporate office, and we brought in regional managers, territory managers, general managers, sales managers, AEs. John Miller back there was intricately involved in that, and we broke up in focus groups. And one of the things that we did is we divided the group up into basically two entities. One group, they were individuals buying outdoor for the first time. They opened up a fitness clinic, and they're trying to start the business on the side, get it going, and they need to learn about outdoor and how to buy it because they've been out of college for 2 or 3 years and they took one marketing class. And then the other group was a regional agency who'd never bought outdoor before, and they wanted to basically train themselves about outdoor before they went out and made the buy. Just like anybody in this room, if you're going to buy a car tomorrow, you're going to go online, you're going to find out what the prices are, you're going to find out what the invoice price is, you're going to find out what the holdbacks are, you're going to get all that information, and then you're going to go sit in front of a dealer and you're going to talk car talk. And it was really exasperating going through that process and realizing it was difficult. Ian Dallimore, his wife had a dress shop, so he kind of took it right from that focus and just ran into one wall after another trying to figure out, I just want to get information so I can make a buy. And it resulted in us having to kind of tear down a lot of systems and rebuild them, and we're still in the process of rebuilding them. But this is a hard media to buy, and we've got to make it easier.
Question?
In the back, you were right.
Sabine, you have a question?
Hi, hello. My name is Rotolo COO, CEO of AdMobilize.com. So one of the ideas you guys are mentioning, what would be interesting for maybe next year's conference, I think it would be an innovation route or path where maybe you guys would include entrepreneurs such as myself, my company, where really, I think many times innovation comes from places outside the industry.
Yeah.
For instance, my company, we're a big data company for outdoors, so we're trying to create solutions that helps you guys get real-time metrics to sell your inventory in a way where the consumer, the guest, is out of these results. So I brought in a team, including the former chief scientist of PayPal, some scientists at MIT, and we've been working 2 years on coming up with these technologies for you guys. So it would be really neat to allow companies such as ourselves to get in this very tight, passionate group, because we have certain things that we can really help you guys, and we're pushing the envelope a little bit, and if you get to our website, you'll see that. But I embrace that. The only way to get perfection is through friction. That's how diamonds are made. So with that, I just wanted to put my 2 cents, and I welcome conversations. And I think for you guys to really take it to the next level, you have to embrace these very young entrepreneurs that can help you guys go where... I've been coming to your conference, this is my 3rd year. First year, 2 years ago, we only had a PowerPoint. Now we have 2 patents on our technology. So
3 screens here.
So 3 screens, yeah. So that's just my 2 cents. But this industry is ripe to really be disrupted. So just embrace us, because we're here to try to help you guys take it to the next level. You have the resources.
I tend to agree with that.
I got to comment. That's a great feedback to us, because one of the things we talked about, Ray, about being sexy.
Right.
And there's 2 things that it takes 2 to tango in the sex department, right? So we need data and we need innovation. That's the 2 pieces. And if we theme around that, we had a theme of connect this year, Joe, but those 2, data and innovation, is what's going to drive that line of growth. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I agree, and I think
much.
one of the things we haven't been very good at as an industry is reaching out to Silicon Alley and Silicon Valley and the entrepreneur generation to begin with. So I think we have to be better at that and listening to understanding what's out there. And it may necessarily not have an immediate connection to out-of-home. I've said for a while, I wish I was in the same room when the guys were developing Foursquare. That would have been all around out-of-home in a lot of ways. So we have to be better connected. I agree with everything you're saying.
And there's a lot of interest. We just closed a big round with some really good names supporting, because they see our vision, and the vision is to support this industry, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a
Thank you.
question.
So you want the bee to move from flower to flower now?
Okay.
Quit being so incestuous, huh?
We have a question coming from Corey Pano. Corey is the Chief Operating Officer of Telmar, and I want to acknowledge him before he asks this question. Telmar helped us develop TAB ratings. Telmar is a primary application that is used by many of you in this room. So I don't want to forget the contribution that Corey has made, and I want to put it in context. I've been at TAB just over 10 years, and since the time I met Corey, he said to me, give us latitude and longitude about where inventory are, because location is the most important thing about this medium. And for 9 years, this industry said, no, you can't have that information. So for 9 years, we had put a restriction on what he could do to provide value to you. And he's been patient, now he finally has the data. So a lot of things that you haven't seen from suppliers like Telmar is because we have had policies that have roadblocked what they could do. Corey, I think you have a question in it.
Well, not so much a question, just really one observation. A lot of progress has been made in terms of the data and getting to ratings that you can equate to television. But one of the things that needs to be recognized is television and single source data is no longer enough. So when you talk about big data, you need to think about data integration, because you have to be able to bring the ratings that you're working with and take it to the next level by integrating it with other data sources. It's a big part of what we do. You know about the fusions that are going on out there with the other single sources of television, with the consumer data. Much of the work that we do is integrating data between different sources, between proprietary data and currency data. So the form that the data is in now is very good, and there's a lot of value coming out of that. But the next evolution is going to be able to take the eyes-on data and take it to the next level through that integration. So that's just one thing I haven't heard.
Yeah, we need to take on telecom partners as well.
Yeah.
And we are having conversations as an industry with some of those partners. There's a lot of providers, some of the telecom providers and some other private companies that are aggregating mobile data. The location piece with the GPS in a mobile device offers very compelling opportunities to give you more robust data about, who is passing signs at different points of the day, and then even the possibility of retargeting people with retargeting consumers through their mobile devices at a point later, post-seeing an outdoor display as they're entering a retail parking lot, or even getting to their home or their office where they're then in front of a computer or a laptop, or able to interact with their mobile device or their iPad at that point. But totally agree with that point of view, and I think the industry is on it. We've had lots of meetings on it, and we are meeting with different suppliers. So it's definitely directionally where we need to be.
I think it's finding the audience, aggregating that audience, and like you said, Jodi, then following that audience and being able to retarget where we can. And I think fusing the data that we currently have with real-world behavioral data, I think is kind of that's where we want to get to. That's going to be the key to getting to the next steps, I believe.
Because Ray, I think, again, at the risk of sounding a little bit controversial, we talk about location. We're a location-based media, but what advertisers want is not location, I don't think, but they want patterns of locations. And patterns of locations will give us intent to purchase and allow us to reach them in the most appropriate way. I don't know who else saw Francois' presentation at 12:30, but he's talking about out-of-home cookies, like cookies you get on the internet. So as you pass, your device allows the advertising, the device to work together to produce an out-of-home cookie, which is going to pop back at you.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably very much towards your point, Corey.
Another question?
Yeah, a question about benchmarks. Do you feel like we've done a good job with going from the old world of our benchmarks, the old 25, 50, 75, 100, that we fully understood that, integrated that, trained both us as sellers and or buyers? And do we even need to think in those terms anymore? Is that holding us back if we think of that as far as integrating us with larger media buys?
I think that went away with 30 sheets, 8 sheets. Yeah, I think it's a whole new language. And as long as we cling to 25, 50, 75, and 100 GRP showings, we're not going to move to where we need to transition to for the future. We've got to dump that, and we've got to speak the same language that all the other media speak.
Well, understood. It's not a question of speaking the same language. It's a question of what does that mean in the world now, the TAB out-of-home ratings is. The old 50, is that now what now is a 70, or is that a 100 grip?
And do we even need to think about
from
that?
market
to market.
I think we're all still exploring that.
Yeah.
I think everyone in our business is still getting up to speed on using the ratings, and what comes out of that is the opportunity for all of us to establish new benchmarks. So we're kind of starting from the ground up with this new set of information that we have to help us make those decisions. We need a little bit of time to see really what's going to work here, what's going to work there, and the benchmarks are coming out of that. So I think everyone's kind of working on their own set of benchmarks now that the standard showing sizes and the other standards have really gone away.
That is such a good question, though, because everybody, we all kind of sit around here and assume that, that's all history. But, I mean, all of us know there's somebody out there asking for a 25, and there's somebody out there fulfilling the request for a 25, because ultimately, and I think Wally Kelly said it best, we're going to speak in whatever language our customers speak in, because we want the business. But we've got to transition out of it, and it's going to take a lot of discipline on our part, and it's going to take a lot of discipline on the buyer's part, and the people that are out there that are not represented, local advertisers, they don't care.
And that's a really good point, Tommy. So I was going to ask yourself and Jodi, because two have been in the business for quite a while, in your specific companies for quite a while. When we launch ratings and the acceptance of ratings within your organizations, and I'll speak for the agency side, Andrea, you can probably agree that we've had our own challenges with getting the acceptance in there. But in your internal organizations, how has the acceptance been? Where do you see you're going? What's the internal training like? What are you guys doing to push that forth?
You want to go first?
I think for the first couple of years, there was a lot of hedging on both the vendor and the buyer side, that it was kind of like who was going to blink first. And so we just, if somebody wanted to default back to easy to DECs, everybody was very willing to do that. I think we got to a point in time that we all realized that if we didn't get serious about teaching and learning the new metrics, we were going to be in this kind of nowhere land for years to come. It wasn't facilitating moving the medium forward. I know at CBS Outdoor we got quite serious about it and hired an internal trainer, Enza Jodi, who I'll give her a call out, did a tremendous job for us over the last 2 years, visiting every single market, doing twice monthly metrics training. We have a hotline, and we're just on it constantly. It's a new language, and it's difficult to learn a new language, especially as an adult. You teach them to children, it's a lot easier. But we all employ grown-ups, and it's hard. It's hard work, but at this point, you know, we do it daily. We talk about it all the time. We have a support system for it. We have research people who answer questions for our clients. And it's the only language, we'll bridge it, but it's the only language that we'll speak at this point. And I think that finally it's getting fast-tracked.
I think it's interesting because we've been talking about going forward from an interpretive point of view, almost translating the old nomenclature and the old metrics to the new metrics and what equals what, right? But then I think we should look forward. I'm particularly looking forward to the ROI studies, because then we're coming backwards and saying, well, okay, what is an appropriate weight of advertising in out-of-home, given the other media mix on that campaign, to produce the required ROI? Because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is to work out what's the right number of ratings, because that'll give us the appropriate reach and frequency required within the other parameters of the advertising effort, right? So it's kind of, we're learning it from hopefully, in due course, what weight do you need to sell more cornflakes?
Yeah.
And at the other end, what was a 25 showing? And maybe they'll meet in the middle at some point, and we'll know how most effectively to market this medium.
Well, the beauty of it is it becomes a different benchmark for every client, for
Every
program.
every
You know,
every
we
product,
have the
absolutely.
flexibility
Every
now
creative.
to do that, which is great.
I'll tell you, in our situation, we just ripped the Band-Aid off. I mean, it was, you know, everybody was kind of going around the edges and trying to loosen it up, and finally we just ripped that baby off. And what we did is, if you go online and you go to any of our markets and you pull up pricing, you're going to see that we did away with just the lines of data. Now you've got, like, in everything you go to, there are like 4 or 5 packages for each product. And each one of those packages are anywhere from like 100 to 150, 200, 300, 400 weekly rating point package against 18 plus. And with the dollar amounts in there, so that we're trying to be as transparent as we can with the advertisers. So when we did that, as an AE, you didn't have too many choices other than to sell what was on the rate card, if you will, what was on the digital rate card. Then we went another step further. We actually have, about every 6 weeks, we bring in about 30 of our account executives in, and they're with us for 4 days, and we start them from the very beginning. We do the Vince Lombardi, this is a football. I mean, we start all over, and we take them all the way through everything, including, you know, being able to sell with the out-of-home ratings. And we bring in, like, Cheryl Zimmerman, who heads up our marketing and services. She comes in and teaches them everything they need to know about the out-of-home ratings, how to speak the language. And then Mindy comes in, and from a creative standpoint, she teaches them how to use creative effectively. And then we just focus on selling techniques. We believe that at this point, that as advertisers, those of you that buy media out there, that you don't want to deal with a used car salesman. You don't want to talk to someone and then they say, okay, well, let me take this back to my manager to see if they'll approve these locations and if they'll approve these rates. What we want to do is we realize we've got to empower our account executives. We have to give them that data so they can pull that data up while they're sitting in front of somebody who's excited, because y'all know this. I mean, for those of you that are selling, it's like romance, right? I mean, and you can't at 10:45 on Saturday night say, listen, I got to go home. Can we pick up right where we left off next week? I mean,
The moment's gone, Tommy.
right, and the magic's gone, okay? So what we had to do is we had to figure out how are we going to be able to let them electronically chart as opposed to having a charting person, being able to do that away from the office, so obviously being able to use Wi-Fi communication so that you can go out, find out what locations are available against the demographic somebody wants, bring those locations to the client, price those locations, and build a proposal and send it to them while you're sitting in front of them. Because that's where the world's going. I mean, none of us want to call Delta Airlines and have them say, well, look, we'll get back to you tomorrow and let you know what flights are available and what the rates are. You're going to go to somebody else. So
You know,
I don't know if that's the right way, but that's the way we're doing it.
It's interesting you bring the conversation back that way. We started with, you know, programmatic for the buy side. This is actually the sell side, and in putting tools that enable a better selling process for us on the operator side. And you know, I know, Ray, you didn't ask it of Clear Channel, but I think another factor in our success of, the movement of ratings adoption, Rocky, one of my early mentors, I see you sitting there, really pushed the training agenda from moving from location or assets, to audience-based selling, and almost, I think at one point he said, don't use a map anymore, and I'm like, that's crazy, Rocky. That's the asset of this industry, so it's both. It's location and audiences together. And our tools internally are bringing those together. You talked about in terms of the product sheets. The second piece of what we're doing is actually infusing other media fluence within our organization. Mark, who comes from an industry here, Walker Jacobs, who's running our sales organization, totally is like, I didn't even know the answer to his question about benchmarking because I'm so new to the industry. So in some ways, I don't want to know.
We don't know either. Don't worry.
Exactly. So it's really just bringing the best of the entrenched and passionate talents that's in the industry with new media fluent people from outside the industry is really what's driving. And I think we're there. You good?
Thanks. I wanted to, how many people in the audience are for specialists or agencies?
You can't raise your hand, Rocky.
Oh, now you raise your hand, Rocky. Yes.
Look at you. He's lock and loaded.
Oh,
Give him that microphone now. All right, keep your weapon pointed up and down range. Ready? Fire! Ooh.
No, there's a couple things that it's interesting since we've been doing these trainings and you were talking about benchmarks and it kind of sparked something. Our benchmarks have hurt our industry. Our benchmarks have kept us from selling the weight needed to move the needle for customers. And consequently, when a cancellation occurs, the needle doesn't move the other way as much as it should. Yeah. So as we're talking about these benchmarks and utilization of TAB out-of-home ratings, and really the media fluence you just mentioned, Renee, which is critical, because it's not just translating what you talked about before into a new language, it's translating what you talked about before, showing how out-of-home can take that dollar, can be more efficient in helping you potentially drive this other media. Because there was nobody here today, when the guy up on stage, I can't remember his name, talked about how exciting it was that out-of-home was following GDP. I don't think there's anyone here that's excited about following GDP. And the purpose of the numbers were not so we could compare with each other. The purpose of the numbers were so that we could go show other media how they could increase their utilization of out-of-home to drive greater share to out-of-home, grow our share. No one's interested in GDP. It's how do we go above that. And one of the things I have to just candidly say I'm seeing lacking in doing these training sessions, and I'm talking broad brush, isn't the ability to translate a 25 showing into 100, whatever. It's that ability to talk about how it works and integrates with other media. And that's why when it comes to data standards and getting our data into as many systems as possible and moving it out there and not being a secret and being proud of it and comfortable with sharing rates and avails out into the world so they can buy it on a Saturday night, that is going to be critical to moving forward. But I think it begins, everybody, and I know Tommy and Jodi, and we've all talked about this, with our account executives being able to talk not just about a location, but in a media fluent way about delivering that audience. And it's not moving from to one, it's moving from with. As you said, Renee, our location base is phenomenal, but we can deliver that audience too, and then you add the ROI studies, and then it's about overcoming that. That's just the comment I wanted to make.
It's the holy grail there. Right?
You know what's wonderful, though, and I don't know how many of y'all know this. I mean, Rocky has an extensive radio background. And any of you that have radio backgrounds, you know, because you're competing with 37 other radio stations in your market, you really need to know your competition, right, Rocky? I mean, you don't go on a sales call if you don't really understand your competition in the radio market, just competing with other radio stations. And then you step out there and you learn what's going on in print, what's going on in cable, what's going on in your network television. And that's something that I think a lot of times we don't push ourselves as hard as we should to be able to make those kind of comparisons to show how much more of an audience we deliver. I guarantee you, every one of you in here have two panels, at most, two panels that will match the #1 radio station in your market if you really understand what share is in the marketplace and you know what that number is, and you compare that to what you reach with out-of-home ratings, you have the #1 radio station, and you could do it with maybe 2 bulletins.
Okay. We're very tight on time. There is a transit workshop for those of your interests that will follow this session. I'd like to thank everyone on stage because these are people who are committed to driving change, positive change through our industry. Andrea, Ray, perhaps your panelists might have some closing remarks that you'd like to make before we end the session.
Anybody have?
Nigel?
Well, I just, all the things we're talking about, be it how we buy and sell it programmatically or not programmatically, what happens in the future and the currency that we use,
Yeah.
I think we've just got to, I'll say it again, I think we've got to try more and more and more to start buying and selling audience. You know, we just talked about radio comparison. I mean, we don't have a conversation about our cost per thousand is cheaper than your cost per thousand because nobody talks about cost per thousand. And until we start talking about audience and impressions in the way that other media do, then I can't see how we're going to use this currency for its intended purpose, which is to erode their share and increase our share. So the more we can sensibly, not just filling in things on a spreadsheet that give a weight of advertising, a number of ratings.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? I mean, why are you doing it? What is the reach? What's the creative? What's the reach? What's the frequency? How can we as vendors help with the appropriate locations to deliver that weight of advertising, which will hopefully sell more conflict? So more audience, please.
It's an ongoing conversation. There'll be a conference every year, so Tommy's committee is going to be long-lived. Data and standards will be evolving and changing over the next decade. Education is just something that we're going to be rolling out, whether it's new metrics training or data, whatever comes next. So good open dialogue, good conversation, and more to come.
We are losing some of our audience here, so I'll just keep it to my two partners for this industry, which is data and innovation, and grow new business.
And I just told y'all everything I know. I don't have any more words.
Well, I think it's a very exciting time for our industry, and I think it's really twofold, especially with what you guys are talking about today. If we can have access to more data that helps us understand our business and how we're able to communicate with consumers and integrate our medium with other media, and then automating that data so that it's easy to use is going to free all of us up to come up with many more strategic and creative programs for our clients. So that's what I'm really excited about. And I want to thank you guys for being our committee chairs. I'm sorry, Ray. I'm excited about you guys because I know how hard you work and I know how tirelessly committed you are to our business. And I think everyone really owes you guys a round of applause for taking your time and making the effort to move our business forward.
Absolutely. I echo that 100%. And
Sorry.
No problem at all, 100%. And I just have 3 words for everybody else to say. First is reach, and that's all about audience. So let's deliver on audience, as Nigel was saying. Second is relevancy. That's all about data and understanding that audience. And the third is recency. And that's getting it fast and getting it to them fast, being able to be nimble and quick. I think if we hit on all 3 of those, as long as especially what everybody else is saying, I think we're right on target as an industry, and I think it's only up for us.
A warm pizza in 20 minutes.
And it's an honor to co-chair our industry's committee with you, Ray.
The same.
And thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank y'all a bunch.